Hey, Rockheads, this is Carl Franklin.
And this is Richard Campbell.
Here to tell you that the NDC Mini Copenhagen show is back.
That's right. The event that takes place March 14th to 16th at the BGI Bain in Copenhagen.
BGI-BYEN, Bain, spelled like it sounds. 2 days of workshops and a one-day conference with great speakers like Scott Allen, Ben Hall, and Dominic Bayer.
Early bird pricing ends on December 31st, so go to ndcmini.com today and register.
And tell them Carl and Richard sent you. Hey, Carl here to say that Music to Code By is now an app called Music to Flow By. Now you can listen to the tracks on your phone with offline capability. The first 3 tracks are free, and the entire catalog is available by subscription with a new track arriving every month. Just go to musictoflowby.com for all the links. Welcome back to .NET Rocks. This is Carl Franklin.
And this is Richard Campbell.
We're here for another hour of .NET-y goodness and some really good stuff coming up from Tomáš. I can't wait to talk to him about version 2.0 of .VVM. We are back in the studio after having a whole bunch of pre-recorded shows. We're basically recording this 2 days before publishing, which is really kind of cutting it close.
What's funny here is, of course, we had all those shows from Connect.
Yep.
Now we have a small block of shows we're going to record before Christmas that will basically carry us to NDC London.
Yeah.
Where we'll do another block of shows at a conference. That's just our lives these days, it seems.
It is our lives. I managed to squeak in a new Music to Code By / Music to Flow By track.
Wow. Was that number 14?
Number 14. I published it today.
Nice.
And it first publishes in the app, Music to Flow By. So if you have a subscription to the app, you get that first. And then a week later or so, I'll publish it as a track on Music to Code By. But if you haven't checked it out, that's what it is. And it's good. You know, I'm back to basics, like a lot of bass, because bass seems to be very relaxing for people, low frequencies.
Right.
Not a lot of sharp sounds, not a lot of drums, but definitely rhythmic counterpoint and stuff. Yeah, it's fun to get back to it after a while.
Absolutely. Good stuff.
All right, let's get to it. Better know a framework.
Awesome.
You better.
All right, what do I better know?
I'd like to thank Brian McKay, the AppVNext superstar who shared this with the group. This is Typewriter. So Typewriter is on GitHub. It's a free extension for Visual Studio that generates TypeScript files from C# code using TypeScript templates.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so it allows you to create fully typed TypeScript representations of server-side API, models, controllers, SignalR hubs, whatever, that automatically update when you make changes to your C# code.
Nice.
How cool is that?
So just part of your build process as you alter the code is going to spit out an updated TypeScript template.
Yep, you just live in the world of TypeScript and everything takes care of itself.
Love it, love it, love it.
Love it, love it, love it.
That's a good one.
Yeah, thanks, Brian, for that. And who's talking to us today, Richard Campbell?
I got an email from Martin Debal. This is back a couple months ago where he said, Dear Carl and Richard, it's exactly 1 year when you did your amazing show with Thomas Herceg about his framework .VVM. I watch sometimes their blog and it looks really cool. They finished a big components pack recently and now they're working on a new UI engine to move forward from Knockout.js. Could you make a new show with them? I'd like to know more.
No.
Nah, not doing it.
No, we're not going to do that.
No.
Sorry.
We're not those guys.
We got to draw the line somewhere. You know, if we don't say no once in a while...
Yeah. What are you going to do?
Everybody will want everything all the time.
Clearly.
So, sorry about that.
Oh, well. We're silly people. You knew we were going to do that, right? All right, Martin, here's the show. Thanks so much for the suggestion. And a .NET Rocks mug is on its way to you. And if you'd like a .NET Rocks mug, write a comment on the website at .NETRocks.com or via any of our social media, because we publish every show to Facebook and Google+. And if you comment there and we read it on the show, we'll send you a mug. And
definitely follow us on Twitter. I'm at Carl Franklin. He's at Rich Campbell. Send us a tweet. We retype them with our Smith Coronas.
Jeez, there's a flashback. Holy man.
Have you seen the Typewriter Orchestra?
No. That's awesome.
Just Google Bing that.
Okay.
And I'll see you in an hour.
Oh, too funny.
That's it. Typewriter Orchestra. It's what you think.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Well, let's bring on Tomáš. Tomáš Herceg is the CEO of Riganti, a small software development company located in Prague in the Czech Republic. Tomáš is a Microsoft regional director, like Richard and myself, a Microsoft most valuable professional, also like Richard and myself, and author of DotVVM, an open source .NET-based web framework, which lets you build line of business applications easily and without writing thousands of lines of JavaScript code. Tomáš speaks about .NET and web development, software architecture, cloud computing, and other awesome topics at technical conferences all over the world. He's co-author of .NET Portal, the biggest Czech website about .NET development, where he has published many articles. He's also co-founder of .NET College, a company which hosts developer training and organizes various community events. Welcome back, Tomáš.
Hello, great to be here again.
DotVVM, it was back in September 2016? I think it was show 1345. We had you talking to us about this, and we were pretty blown away then. I can't wait to hear what there is new, but take us back there and give us the elevator pitch somewhere between what I just said and what it really is.
Okay, so the show was recorded in September. It was about 2 months after our first stable release, when the first version was only supporting the old .NET framework.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have a version which supports .NET Core.
Yeah.
Great.
And we have been talking about the basic features, how MVVM pattern works in .VVM. You can write view models in C# and the views in HTML syntax with some extensions. We have our own syntax for data bindings. The data bindings get translated from C# to JavaScript. So basically you can write line of business web apps practically without writing JavaScript. You just use HTML and C#.
Nice.
Well, that's very cool. And we liked it back then, and we still like it. And ever since I saw Knockout, we were both WPF Silverlight developers, or, we at least knew what it was and we're messing around with it. And then Knockout comes out, and Steve Sanderson, right, Mr. Silverlight, does the first sort of web binding-ish, VVM-ish kind of thing in JavaScript. And it's just kind of surprising that it didn't get taken to this logical conclusion that you've taken it to before .VVM, or am I wrong? Have there been other attempts to make a VVM model work in C# with the web?
I think I've seen some library which was, I don't know the exact name, it was something like ASP.NET Knockout, and basically it was a set of, I believe it was HTML helpers in MVC. So you could write C# code and it generated the Knockout.js controls and things like that. But the .VVM has gone further than that, because we have implemented also the way from the data from the UI back to the server. You click the button and the changes you have made to the view model on the client side will get to the server when you can easily process them, store it in the database, and whatever you want to do with them.
That's very, very cool. So who has been using .VVM since you first talked about it? I mean, how many downloads? Do you have any stories about some high-profile cases that are using it?
We have certainly a lot of companies here in the Czech Republic, because I have been speaking about .VVM since we have started working on that. So there is hundreds of companies basically in the Czech Republic. And also we got a lot of companies from all over the world based on the show we had last year, because many people wrote us emails and contacted us on the Gitter that they saw .VVM or heard about .VVM in .NET Rocks, and they are very interested in this technology. Actually, we have some larger corporate customers, but they have just started a few months ago, because still this framework is not so old, so it takes a lot of time until really large companies start to trust this technology.
Right.
Well, you have several bank institutions in the Czech Republic which started using .VVM on their projects. And also we have written several articles on various dev magazines, and all those brought us a lot of new users. And lately we have been working on some integration scenarios with ASP.NET Web Forms, because there are a lot of companies which have old Web Forms applications, and basically they cannot rewrite them from scratch because if the application is being developed for 10 years, there's no chance that you will be able to rewrite it in 1 year, no matter what technology you will use. And because .vvm supports also .NET Framework, and basically it's on .NET Framework, it's Owin middleware, so you can easily integrate .vvm in existing web forms apps. So you can start writing new screens and new areas of these old web apps in .vvm, or you can rewrite the screens as you go. So you can continue with the development, you can add new features, and after some time, maybe you will get rid of all web forms screens and you will be able to update the application to .NET Core, because the API in .vvm is exactly the same.
That's awesome.
That is so fantastic. What a great pitch, because clearly there are a lot of people now who, with Core 2.0 just want to move, and especially all that old legacy web form stuff, it's got to go. AppV Next right now is doing a rewrite of one that wasn't expected to make it through the new year. It's so fragile.
Wow.
Yeah. This is the time. I mean, everybody's doing the migrations, the lifts and shifts. Mm-hmm. And what a great way to tackle it.
Yeah, that was our original intent, because I felt that web forms do not have any new version, new successive technology that would allow the similar way of development like the developers were used to, because most of the applications are just a graphical interface over a relational database.
Yeah.
And with today technologies, it's you have to combine dozens of libraries, something in C#, something in JavaScript, and you wanted to have the similar easy approach for simple database interfaces, grids, and forms for editing the records.
Absolutely. It's easy to get this to just be too complicated to use, to get people too confused on what they have to do next. If I read our timing right, are you about to ship 2.0? Like, as we're recording this, it's like the next day or two?
As today, when we record the show, .vvm 2.0 is not on the official NuGet feed. It's only in our private builds.
Okay.
But we will be releasing it in a few days. It will be this week. So the beta will be available very soon. Maybe when this show is published, maybe it will already be there. Mm-hmm. And there are plenty of new features we have been working on since the last release with .NET Core support.
Now, the Visual Studio support, there's 2 levels, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have Visual Studio extension. We had this extension since the first version, and it's also, I think it's the biggest argument for using .vvm is the Visual Studio integration, because we have spent really a lot of time on making this actually work. And the free version of this extension, there is a project template, so you can click File, New Project, .vvm, and go. You have empty .vvm app, which you can use to start. And there is also a commercial version, which adds much better IntelliSense. There is actually some IntelliSense in the free version. So you will get the list of .vvm controls and their properties and things like that. But if you want IntelliSense in data binding expressions, this is included in the commercial version. And there is a lot of features like F12 go to definition, so you can go through the view to the corresponding place in view model, and many features like that.
And speaking of features, one thing I really like about DotVVM is just how clean it is. Like, you don't require us to inherit base classes, I don't think. And you have the special dot prefix that you can basically just say what your command name is and what your value. It's easy. There's not a lot of plumbing like we're used to in WPF or UWP, for example.
Yeah. XAML was one of the inspirations we took for when we started developing .vvm, and we have made a list of things we would like to avoid, which are present in XAML, and we tried to avoid them. So we tried to make the binding syntax much more available, easier, and also we took a lot of inspirations from web forms, and also we tried to make the API of controls much easier to use, get rid of all the bloat and things that are not necessary, like run it equals server. This is crazy. So we don't have anything like that. The syntax is very clean, And also the HTML, which is produced by controls, is very straightforward. It's the minimum possible HTML which the control can produce. And if you want to apply any CSS styles, you can just add the class attribute to any control and style it as you need. So it doesn't produce any inline style like web forms.
Now, these controls, there's 20 some odd built-in controls, 25?
Yeah.
They're built in C# and comes with source code. So if you don't like the way something is rendered as either CSS or whatever, are they C# or are they JavaScript?
Most of them are in C#. There is some JavaScript required. If you are building controls and want, for example, the validation to work correctly on text boxes or something like that, we had to write some JavaScript, but it's generic. So if you want to use text box and have it validated, you don't need to write this JavaScript again.
Wow.
That's cool.
Or, for example, formatting or things like that. If you enter some number in the text box and apply the format string equals something, it will get formatted automatically when you write the value in the text box. So we had to write the JavaScript.
Yes. And one other really important question is, how close to the web form syntax? I know this isn't like supposedly a drop-in replacement for web forms, but how closely to the syntax are these controls in terms of property names and things?
Most of the property names are the same or very similar. There are some things inspired more with WPF than web forms.
Interesting.
But for example, the text box, there is a repeater which was present in web forms. You can use item template inside of the repeater. So we tried to make this as most accessible for web forms guys, so they won't have to learn so much new things. And also we have got a lot of great feedback from WPF or Silverlight developers, because the API is not the same, but it's also very similar. It's the Microsoft-ish way of naming controls and naming things. And they like the binding syntax, the MVVM. And one great thing which I was always missing in WPF is to be able to access the parent context in the binding. If you are, for example, in the grid view and you want to access something from the parent view model, the view model of the entire screen, it's much more difficult in WPF than in .vvm because of Knockout.js, which have this out of the box. So even in .vvm, you can just say _parent, and you can access the parent context or root context or whatever context, wherever in the hierarchy you are.
Nice.
Thomas, one of the things that I really like is just all the things that you've thought of that are in the box that enterprises would like. Localization or, validation, of course, but grids. You've got grids that have the sorting on the server side and paging and file uploading. And all the things that you thought of that we would need. I mean, this isn't just a half-baked idea that has some sample code in it. This is pretty rich.
Yeah, we have fine-tuned the set of controls on our own projects, because most of the guys who are working on .vvm framework, they come from my company, and we are building software for our clients. We are using on our internal projects, we are using .vvm since version 0.6, and I think most of the features in .vvm are tested by us. And of course, our applications require these functionality like server-side sorting in grids. And we are also always been using .NET, so we know it pretty well. And we have just tried to took everything which .NET has, the localization using resource files, the validation, attributes and things like that. And we just integrate it in .vvm. So basically everything you are used to in .NET from other technologies like WPF or web forms, you can use this also in .vvm.
And of course, nothing is preventing you from using other JavaScript things like Bootstrap or other stuff like that, right? I mean, you're not locking yourself into anything, are you?
Yeah, of course. So you are not locking yourself, because what .vvm does is actually it provides a wrapper over Knockout.js. So even if you want to use any third-party controls from other vendors like Telerik or DevExpress or anyone, if they support Knockout.js, you can just use Knockout.js syntax and you can just paste a snippet of HTML which uses the data bind syntax of Knockout.js, and it will work because .vvm will give you your C# view model on the client side, and you can do whatever you want to do. And also, if you want to change something, the view model on the client side, there is a JavaScript API you can use to manipulate with anything, basically, which is part of the view model. So it's very extensible, and we have a lot of customers that are very happy because they use .vvm for 90% of the repetitious work, and if there is 10% which they are missing, they just sit down and write their own controls or their own mechanisms and extend .vvm with the things they really need.
And like I said, you could write it in either JavaScript or C#, doesn't really matter. It's just how you interface together with the framework.
Yes, you can choose whichever way you want. If you are building just one-time control, which you are using on one page,
right,
you can do everything on the server, just spit out some HTML, substitute some data from the view model, and render this right in the HTML. If you want your control to be universal and to work smoothly with other parts of .vvm. For example, if you want to have this control appear multiple times on the page,
right,
for example, in the repeater or something like that, you will need to write a Knockout.js binding handler for this control, so it can be used multiple times on the page, and it can be dynamically created and removed Knockout.js.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's the better way to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. You could quickly just stick something in there if it's just a one-timer.
Yeah.
So why did you choose Knockout?
Because we have started working on .vvm 3 years ago. We didn't have these technologies like we have now. If we were starting today, I would definitely choose something else than Knockout. But
why? What would just for the feature set or the performance or what?
I think that Knockout.js is being maintained somehow, but we cannot expect more and more features. And also there is a limitation of third-party vendors, which are also, if they support Knockout, they are not going to invest in it. So if they introduce new controls, there is a chance that they won't be supported in Knockout. That's my feeling. I think that Knockout is after its greatest days, and today we would go with something based on VDOM. I don't know if React or if we use the VDOM itself, but I think we would choose another approach today.
Has Steve Sanderson seen it?
I don't know.
That's great. That'd be fun. I'd like to see his reaction to it.
No,
he's a brilliant guy.
I haven't met the guy personally. I have always wanted to meet him on MVP Summit or something like that, but I never run into him, so I didn't have a chance to talk to him.
Well, if you'll be at the MVP Summit this year, maybe we can try to arrange something. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I would be actually very interested. And also, he started playing with WebAssembly.
Oh, yeah.
The Blazor project.
Yeah, the Blazor project.
And this is another area where new frameworks and new technologies can emerge.
Yeah.
So this must be very interesting to talk with him about WebAssembly and all the options that WebAssembly can bring.
Hey, Richard.
Yeah, buddy.
Guess what time it is?
It must be that happy time again.
Yeah, it's time to introduce my new product, .zzm.
Oh.
It's .vvm with 4-foot beards, spinning guitars, and cheap sunglasses. .zzm.
That's ZZM. Yeah, it's
But a killer guitar sound. Holy crap.
old school music, my friend.
It's actually time to give away a D-Experience subscription from DevExpress to one lucky member of the .NET Rocks fan club. Become a UI superhero with DevExpress UI controls and libraries, and deliver elegant .NET solutions that address customer needs today, and leverage your existing knowledge to build next-generation touch-enabled solutions for tomorrow. Whether it's an Office-inspired application or a data-centric analytics dashboard, DevExpress Universal ships with everything you'll need to build your best without limits or compromise. And check out their DevExtreme React Grid, built from the ground up to fully support all the cool features that come with React, like virtual DOM and state controllers like Redux. It supports master detail, sorting, grouping, paging, and editing, and you can check it out and test it for free on GitHub. But learn more and download your free 30-day trial of DevExpress Universal at devexpress.com/superhero.
Well, all right, buddy. Who's our winner?
Today's winner, Richard, is Stephen Bennett.
Congratulations, Stephen.
Yeah.
I'll clap for you, sir.
And Stephen just won a D-Experience subscription, a big pile of awesome from our friends at DevExpress, just for being a member of the .NET Rocks fan club. And hey, if you don't know what that is, go to .NETRocks.com, click on the big Get Free Stuff button, answer a few questions, and join the fan club. We have thousands of members all over the world. In every show, we like to give away stuff from our sponsors. And every December, like we just did on Thursday, we give away a $5,000 technology shopping spree to one lucky member of the .NET Rocks fan club. But you got to sign up to win. And we'd like to ask our guests, of course, Tomáš, if you had $5,000 to spend on technology right now, what would you buy?
Well, last time I was on this show, I said I want to buy some model trains.
Mm-hmm.
And since that, I didn't have time to do anything with my model trains. So maybe the answer is still the same. I want some model trains and also some free time to be able to do something with them.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, that's always the tricky part, is getting some time to play with our toys.
Maybe if they sell some free time, it would be very interesting to me.
Nowadays, model trains come with people that make movies with their model trains.
Sure.
You know, that's like the next step up, is to make films that look like little towns and stuff. Yeah. I don't know if you know this, and maybe I said this on the last show you were on, Tomáš, but Neil Young, the songwriter, famous rock musician in America, he and his son did model trains. They had a whole outbuilding for the trains that they did, HO scale trains. I remember seeing a special on it. He has a special needs son, and he was spending a lot of time out there with his son doing the trains. Very cool.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the cool thing is, after you use .vvm and you do zero JavaScript and get your web app running, you're running on .NET Core.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it's a strength. I think people are just getting their head around .NET Core, so being able to give us some tooling that just makes it that much easier. Tomáš, do you find that there are folks with projects that are, like you said, written with web forms that are using system.web, so they're stuck on the old framework? They're in transition. They're going to actually run both versions of the framework to get across?
Well, I haven't seen these two frameworks combined in one application. I'm not sure if it is possible, if it's even possible to do. But also, I have seen a lot of applications that some modules are written in .NET Core, some are still in the old web forms.
Right.
They started using containers and things like that. And basically, they are going in the way of microservices, or maybe something more than one big monolith, which is the web forms big app. And the new features are done as microservices, which lies somewhere around this old monolith.
Yeah, it's interesting to sort of unpeel this onion and say, how am I going to continue to advance this app, but not make it dependent on this older technology? And clearly all the stuff will run together. I just think it's intimidating for some folks to do that. So I appreciate your tool sort of sitting in the middle to make life easier for us.
Yeah, and also we have a lot of customers that they want to get rid of web forms as quickly as possible because they are, for example, still using the forms authentication, which is today, it's quite outdated. They want to use the new authentication middlewares in ASP.NET Core because there's much better chance that these will stay up to date. Also, if they're using social network sign-in, the libraries for the web forms or for these old frameworks, they are not maintained, so the new versions of the OAuth workflow don't work there. So there's a lot of reasons to go or to upgrade to .NET Core, and .vvm can help with this because the API of view models and the framework is same on .NET Core and .NET Framework. The only difference is in the startup, because the OVIN configuration is different than ASP.NET Core configuration. But that's just one file that's being changed. The rest is exactly the same.
You guys have a video series and some really great guidance on .vvm.com. Can you tell us about that?
Recently, we have produced several videos. We call them .vvm Coffee. It's not educational video. It's more that demonstration of features the framework is capable of. So it's 1 or 2 minutes, basically, for one video. So recently we have been doing a conference about .NET Core, and we got the big TV and played the videos in the loop, and it was very nice because people were gathering at the TV and they were looking how you do master pages in .vvm, how you can write your own controls, how the data binding works. And the videos are short, so it's easy to watch during the coffee break on a conference.
But you also have some really good small samples that are easy to digest and, granular enough that you can just sort of copy and paste code.
Yeah. We have a lot of samples in the documentation. Few months ago, there were an option to run them, but then we have been changing the structure of the documentation. So now you cannot just run the samples. You have to copy paste it to your own app. But still, every control has few samples which demonstrates the usage. And also we have several sample applications. There is one application called Checkbook. You have a group of people who are going to the same restaurant and they have to pay together, so they can record who paid which amount for whom and things like that. So this is demonstration of how you can use .vvm in combination with Bootstrap. And also there is a Northwind sample, which is a bigger application, which demonstrates most of the features for line of business applications. There's, for example, global exception handling, localization. Also, there is one page which demonstrates a library called .vvm dynamic data, which allows to generate grids and forms just from the database schema. It's similar than ASP.NET had dynamic data years ago. And it was very easy to use. And in .vvm, this is a little bit more configurable. And you can you don't have to write the form with 50 fields. You can just generate it from an object you are trying to edit. And you can use attributes to specify the annotations. What is the name of the field? You can apply some styles. If some field is more important than the others, you can apply a CSS class on it. You can disable some fields based on user roles and things like that. And you are just writing attributes on a C# class. Then you pass this object in the view model, and .vvm will generate the form for you. And you can customize the process. So if you are using Bootstrap, you can generate the set of div elements with the corresponding CSS classes for Bootstrap. If you want to use tables for your forms, you can customize how the form is actually rendered.
And you're talking about control development here. Is there such a thing as a .vvm control marketplace where people can share controls that they've written?
Not yet. We have been thinking about it because it's quite interesting idea. Maybe it don't have to be limited to .vvm. Maybe I would appreciate something like this for the entire .NET. We have NuGet, of course, with the libraries, but maybe some smaller pieces of code which could be put on some marketplace and used easily. That would be great. We don't have any marketplace for .vvm controls. We have a repo called .vvm contrib, and anyone can add their own controls to this repo, and we will build the NuGet packages and publish on NuGet. And there is a project template. So if you want to add your own control, you can just say .NET new, and there is some name of the template, and it will generate a project for the control itself, some project to demo application which is using this control, and test project with Selenium, so you can write UI tests for the control quite easily.
Nice. And I presume anybody writing controls has got to think about responsive web design as well. Make sure that things deal with the narrow form factors better.
Yeah. And typically we are leaving this to CSS.
Right.
Most of the controls in .vvm, they just don't use any CSS classes. You can apply your own ones, so you can tell how this control should look like, how the control should look like, and that's it. Also, we have some commercial controls on .vvm. We have a project called .vvm Business Pack, and these ships with CSS styles or themes or something like that. There is also a theme editor where you can customize your own themes.
Nice.
Yeah. So what's next? What's on your to-do list for .vvm?
Well, currently we are finalizing .vvm 2.0, which will bring several new and very interesting features like REST API bindings, because we have observed situations that on some more complicated pages, the view model can get pretty heavy because it has to contain all the data in the page. So if you have a grid with 5,000 rows, they have to be persisted in the view model somehow.
Right.
And of course, 5,000 rows in a grid is not a good idea from the UX perspective,
No.
but there are some customers which this is not an argument for them. They don't care about UX. They just were used that 5,000 rows is normal in the grid view, so they need to have this.
We're still having this we've been having this argument for 30 years.
I know.
Where you're never going to look at 5,000 rows. I don't care. I want them.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, why is it so slow?
Yeah. And this makes the view models quite heavy. So we have implemented the REST API integration. So you can use the view model only for persisting state. For example, which column you are sorting by, or on which page you are, or some filters and things like that. And the data of the grid view can be loaded separately from a REST API. You can, of course, reuse this REST API, for example, if you are doing a mobile application or things like that. So the view model is very tiny. It will contain all the state information and not the data itself.
Yeah.
And there are some options to refresh when something changes in the data. So you can refresh the specific binding to reload new data from the REST API. Also, this can be cached. So you don't need to query the database over and over because the REST API calls can be cached quite nicely.
I'm looking at the VVM roadmap for 2, and you also talked about a concurrency mode for postbacks. This is really interesting.
Yeah, it was an issue because that comes maybe from web forms, because in web forms where you clicked on some button twice, it would just generate 2 postbacks,
Right.
so you had duplicate records in the database.
Yep.
And the first version of .vvm, we have been using the same behavior because if there is a problem with the connectivity, you don't want to block the user interface.
Right.
So we had also the issue with double postbacks. It could be quite easily solved by some adding one binding expression, the enabled property of the button, but still. And now we have introduced the concurrency mode property, and there are basically 3 modes. The first one is the default, which was in the .vvm 1.0, and the second one is that the postbacks are put in the queue, so another postback cannot start when any other is still running, so they're queued. It's good for example, if you have timer in the page or things like that.
Right.
This is a good scenario for the queue because you never know if the timer fires the event, if the user is doing something or not. And also there is the deny option, which will prevent the second postback. If there is some postback running, you cannot create another one.
And does it raise an error or just ignores the postback?
It will drop the event, so
Right.
it will do nothing, basically. If you are too lazy to disable the button, it won't do anything if you click it for the second time.
Well, it's nice to have that granularity. Nobody wants 2 records entered, really.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Also, we have a lot of new features planned there. My personal favorite is, for example, a global enabled property for form controls. On any element, can say something like for controls enabled equals and some binding expression, and all controls inside this element will get enabled or disabled.
Wow.
Which is great because sometimes you want to disable the entire form, which has 30 fields, and you can do this on one place.
Right.
And of course, you can override this for individual controls, but still, there is one global switch for enabling or disabling the form.
Awesome.
And it's probably fairly code efficient on the front end too, that just you could see someone and flips to a particular mode in the form, and so all this other stuff has to be disabled, and you just be able to trigger it off. They change it, trigger it back.
Yeah.
Those are good pages. Are you doing a dependency injection in web controls? I love everything about that.
Originally, in the first versions, we didn't mean the controls to have any logic which would work with data. We wanted to handle the presentation logic in the controls. So the control can decide what it will render based on something that is in the view model, but the control itself shouldn't communicate with the database or things like that. But we have found a lot of situations where this can be really useful. So we have added an option to have dependency injection in the controls. So you can write your own control. You can inject some service based on the default .NET dependency injection mechanism, which is part of ASP.NET Core. and you can use this service in the control to do whatever you want. So this is one thing. Also, we have enabled the injecting the services into the views.
Mm-hmm.
So you can, if you have a button, you can just call some function on the service, and this doesn't generate postback. We call this a static command because originally it was used to call a static method, but you can call a function on any service that gets resolved from the DI container, and it doesn't transfer the view model from the client to the server. So you can save a lot of bytes being transferred over the network. So this can make many things much more lightweight and optimized. And still, the features like concurrency mode works also on these functions. So it's quite easy to use.
Very cool.
I'm just continuously blown away by what you guys are doing. And I think our listeners are as well. It's .vvm.com. Go get it. Get it now. Check it out. Thomas, thank you so much.
Okay, if you want to be blown away a little bit more, for the next version of .vvm 3.0, we are trying to get rid of Knockout.js and to replace it by VDOM.
Wow.
Because there is a lot of limitations in Knockout.js. We will still support it, but the default controls in the framework will not need it because we will replace this layer with VDOM, which will be much more performant, especially on the most complicated pages.
Right.
With a lot of data right there. And if there is some control which requires Knockout.js, we have already a working prototype of some Knockout compatibility layer that will load the Knockout and will create some interface between the VDOM and Knockout. So the control code work, even if it's assuming that we have Knockout, but the rest of the application will not have Knockout.js. So this is also thing we want to do because many people were telling us that Knockout is outdated and we don't want to use it. It's too many years old.
Yeah.
Then what's popular now, even today, people don't want to use JavaScript libraries from 2016, for example. So it's very difficult.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so you think you're going to be able to build a clean bridge for us when we get to 3.0 to just switch out that underlying layer? Our existing pages should just work again?
Yeah, it should. Everything should work as it was. Only if you have write some JavaScript which manipulates with the Knockout.js view model, you will have to do some changes, but maybe they won't even be breaking changes because we have already implemented a prototype of this, and we made everything work without any changes in the code. So this underlying technology will change, and maybe nobody will even notice that it has changed.
Wow.
Except it would be much quicker.
That's awesome. I can't wait. Thank you, Tomáš.
Yeah, welcome. It was great time to be here.
Yeah, and you keep us posted.
Of course.
On anything new. When 3.0 comes out, you come back.
Okay, thanks.
All right. And we'll see you next time on .NET Rocks. .NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net and produced by Plop Studios, a full-service audio, video, and post-production facility located physically in New London, Connecticut, and of course in the cloud. Online at pwop.com. Visit our website at dotnetrocks.com for RSS feeds, downloads, mobile apps, comments, and access to the full archives going back to show number 1, recorded in September 2002. And make sure you check out our sponsors. They keep us in business. Now go write some code. See you next time.
Got a transmitter banned by the FCC. Yes, I'm a